Welcome to Carmel again, folks. This is our intro. This is going to be about a process. How to proceed, how to start, how to endure as you travel to God, as you respond to God from the Carmelite point of view. Now we're going to talk a process talk. Processes are oftentimes very boring. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but it is a potential point for you to end up in the ditch. And you're going up, we want to keep you on the main traveled portion of the road. So the process. You are being pursued by God. You're going to be in the worst case scenario in some type of fog. You're wondering what to do, how to proceed, where to go at. Well, we have some pointers on the map of knowledge. And so those pointers are telling you there's a general means to perfection, a general way to approach God, a general way God is going to be calling you to approach Him. And we'll go through them. We've done them in previous tapes. But there's a specific means that He may call some of you. And we discussed those generals and means and the specific means, identify them, point them out on your map of knowledge. What I didn't really talk about is a process. So you're going along and you're going to get some resistance. Know this, that God is not going to call you in the ordinary course of events along a way that's inconsistent from what He previously called you. So that if He's called me along a path to pray the rosary, it's unlikely that in the future, as I become more specific, He's going to say, abandon the rosary and abandon your devotion to Mary. It's not going to be in the ordinary course of proceeding how He's going to call. So we take a look at those general means, and then we look at the special, and we know that the first point, God is reordering. He's got to reorder because there's been a fall. So we know a little bit about God, is acting and He's reordering creation to Himself. And so He's like a funnel. He's got a wide bringing you closer in. He's not going to take a specific means and stiff you and push you away. So we know He's reordering and He's bringing you closer in with the general means. So let's visit those general means. And they're very easy to find on the internet, and they're in Catholic catechisms all over in the 60s and the 50s. So I won't go over them too much, but I want to mention them here. The general means includes frequent recourse to prayer, some occasional solitude, reading spiritual books, frequenting the sacraments, examination of conscience. This listing of ways and means are helpers to get you, that will get you and will allow you to draw closer to union with God. And that's just what's been discerned. The process is that you'll begin discerning a closer way to come to God. And you will have an enemy. And this is where we talk about the temptations. And the temptation may be not to examine your conscience. The temptation may be, I'm not gonna pray anymore. I'm working in the food kitchen. I'll just give out food. I feel that closer in. That's not a discernment that would be called valid, and it is an error that easily is made because we're now asking people, are they hungry, and we're giving them food. Maybe we become a Franciscan. We don't need to pray anymore. Not a good choice, okay? So I want you to understand the process. It's like a funnel, the general into the specific, okay? And you're not going to be abandoning that. I act in goodwill and good faith and in the general means, and as I live in community out in the world and say I'm an accountant, and I step over the threshold and enter religion, and now I feel called to not live with good faith and not live with goodwill, ain't going to happen. That's not from God. Now, so procedural, you discern a call from God, and you're discerning a particular means that God can be calling you closer in. Could be as a lay person to take on some type of spirituality, the Sacred Heart, Divine Mercy, rosary devotion, Our Lady of Perpetual Help, but you're coming in and you may want to create a new pathway. You want to go and open up avenues of feeding and give vaccines and deal with people who live on the street in other countries. There, you're doing good, but the general means you pray daily, and all of a sudden you're giving up your prayers. All of a sudden you're not going to church. That is probably not enough in cases of war, but that you can see if God is the one who's giving the unctions and the desires, and you're looking for whether it's from God or not. God is intelligible. He's not going to act unintelligible. So he's not going to lead you by a way he's brought you to from before. He's not going to ask you if to produce puppies, okay? If you're a human, you produce humans. If you're a pear tree, trees produce pears. They don't produce puppies. So I just want to get to you. I want to put on your map of knowledge, there is resistance. One of the first steps of resistance is confusion. The first thing that will confuse you is Satan, and Satan will cloak that which is good with evil. Satan will cloak that which is evil with good. Let me repeat that. One of your enemies along this path is Satan. He's not going to come and tell you if you're on fire and want to serve God that he's do evil. That ain't going to happen. He has to deceive. He's known as a deceiver. And so according to the Carmelites, according to John of the Cross, one of the first things he's going to do is to put a cloak over that which is evil. So and that cloak will be a cloak of goodness, and you'll be deceived, and you'll approach good, you'll approach evil because he's cloaked it in goodness. For example, you're going to bake bread and not pray. You can do both, pray and bake bread. Another thing that Satan will do is he will cloak that which is good with a cloak of evil, so you'll be repelled from that. You'll be repelled. So he will cloak prayer, which is good, with an idea that it's waste of time. He'll cloak that prayer, and you'll be repelled from something that's good. Do you see that? So you want to watch this process. It goes back very simple. Don't have to be a theology student. Very simple. General and specific. You're not, in the ordinary course of events, going to be getting rid of the general, the way God brought you, to come to a more specific way. There's a symphony. They're complementary. They're symbiotic. They work together. So you are invited to accept this specific set of means to an end, which is union with God and perfection. And this is essential knowledge, because I don't want to dwell too much on the diabolical right now. We're in the ordinary, and so I just want to keep you focused, and you do your processing. You look at the general. Don't give up the ground you gained in the general to accept the specific. Now, and the specific complements that, and so your end is with him who loved you first. That's your goal. And these specific means are charisms and graces, and there's specific orders. There's a specific ordering of your life, and some of these are called congregations and institutes, associations of apostolic life. That's easy for us to see, but it could be a prayer group. And you're all birthed in the womb of Christ, birthed in the body of Christ. And to be legitimate, you're not going to ask to do something evil. I hope that's clear. Seppi, is that kind of clear? And so I didn't want to dwell on it too much. So because there's the general and the specific. The specific is like a special expression of the will of God. And he's not going to take a human and ask you to become a pig. That ain't going to happen. What happens, though, is he may transform your appetites so where you're eating hot dogs, you're eating food, and he may transform that appetite so you begin to thirst for God, and your appetites will go on God. That's a transformation. So you begin to go from hot dogs to consume God. And that's more in the prayer tape. We'll talk about that in appetites. I think we discussed that before in the tape on the leaking cisterns and appetites. So don't mix this up with that. We're talking about a means to an end, the general means and the specific means, and this is the first point that I've used on your map to discuss the movement of the enemy forces. Satan is one of your enemies along this path, and he's going to be trying to cause you confusion and deceive you. And oftentimes John the Cross talks about it as you're going up that mountain of perfection, you're carrying a backpack, there will be rocks put in the backpack. You want to take the rocks out. Those rocks can be temptation, can be confusion, can be unnecessary. It's not going to stop you, but it can weaken you. It can take you down. And so confusion. You go off over here and you quit praying for a week or two. Just come back and pray. But it slows you down and it makes your progress that much more difficult. I'm trying to prevent that, and I'm trying to give you that information that I have received from those who have gone before us. So in conclusion, there is a process. It's known. It's accepted. It's not contested. So if you got some spiritual director or some person that's saying that hey, there is no process, do your own thing, look at their life. See what kind of guide they are. Look at the fruit. Are they, telling you that pear trees can produce puppies? They don't. Pear trees don't produce puppies. And that's called natural law. And this generation, for some reason, hates law. I'll do a whole series on law. And in this generation, most of them have never heard that the original, they're not going to be comfortable with the concept of that. In the beginning, they lived with God. Humanity lived with God in a relationship described as justice, kind of a law relationship there. So I don't want to get too far, digress. I do digress, but you're falling in love. You may or may not be in pain, but many people draw closer to God because of the what life's experiences brought them, that they've been deceived. And there's empty promises in the world to do this and to do that. This is empty promises. You have a dignity that goes beyond all understanding. You have a dignity that you can. There's some risk to that dignity, meaning you can take risks. You don't live where you don't have the tyranny of the possible. Don't do always the possible. God may ask of you in your mind what's not possible. Go to school, get an education, do this or do that, and it can be scary. So I leave you with that. In conclusion, processes are there to protect you. Try to know what the processes are. And if you got somebody that's just spot here, there's some confusion in the way they've ordered their life, they're probably confused inside, and they're going to order you to confusion. Carmelites talk about that. They do not avoid John the Cross. We'll talk about poor spiritual direction. He labels them, he identifies them, and puts them on the map. There are three enemies to the soul itself, Satan, and poor spiritual directors. The self, poor spiritual directors, and Satan. Did you know that? Keep that in mind.